It sounds like when you first came to America, you were quite dazzled by it.
And we walked in and I was totally dazzled by it. So I remember being very dazzled by escalators at the time. It's the kind of thing to a kid that was absolutely dazzling. I am still somewhat dazzled by that journey. I was always more dazzled and attracted to America.
I was. I mean, look, I grew up in India. I grew up very, my parents were upper middle class. But, India was one of the poorest countries in the world. America was the richest country in the world. So just that difference alone is dazzling at some level.
Razzle dazzle. Indian men are known for three things: eyebrows, opinions, and suppressed rage. And maybe no Indian man has all three of those qualities in more abundance than Fareed Zakaria. Or at least, that was my hypothesis going into this interview. Clearly he's got the goods in the brow and the take department, but his CNN show, Fareed Zakaria GPS, is the calmest, quietest show on cable news.
The effects of tariff policies are inherently regressive. The Biden administration has handled the Ukraine crisis intelligently. The premise of an open society is that people should be free to consume what information they want.
I have never seen Fareed lose his shit. But I figured all that volcanic Indian dad rage must be trapped deep down inside of him like lava. The pressure just slowly building deep in his chest every day, just wanting to explode. So when I sat down with him for an interview, I decided to test my hypothesis. I brought along a qualified primal scream therapist, Dr. Janet Richardson, to take us both through some cathartic screaming exercises using carefully crafted statements meant to trigger maximum rage.
Your wife has been cheating on you with Ronnie Chang.
Now, for me it worked great. All that negativity and anger just flowed out of me, bursting like a pipe.
Not Ronnie! Not Ronnie! I hate it! I hate it!
But Fareed just couldn't get there.
A liberal education is worthless.
He kept calmly explaining how he tries to, quote, engage with life's problems in a thoughtful, sober, rational way. Really whack. But then I realized, hey, maybe I don't know Fareed as well as I thought. So we went on to have a long, deep conversation about his role in the media, America's role in the world, and what it means to be an American. I also totally meant to talk about his new book, Age of Revolutions. That was actually the whole reason why we sat down. But we didn't get around to talk about it. It's great though, so you should seriously check it out. This episode is brought to you by Kolkata Chai. Want a healthier morning habit? Put down the coffee and drink chai. I only drink the best, Kolkata Chai. You can get it right now at kolkatachai.co. Oh, and you should probably exercise. I heard that works too.
Can I be honest with you? I think you are living every father's dream. Every guy in their 20s wants to be a rock star. Every man in their 60s wants to be Fareed Zakaria. You get to give your opinion on politics in the world, and everybody around the world gets to listen to you.
There's a certain truth to that. I mean, I wouldn't. There are also other dreams people have, like being billionaires.
No. Even the billionaire is waiting to sit at a dinner table and go, son, this is what we need to do about Ukraine, and have all their children go, yeah, Dad, you're probably right. Your desk is every dad's dream dinner table. And I know that because if you just look at the comments underneath your Facebook posts. So every week you put up your headline. These are some of the comments from your Facebook post.
This is going to be news to me because I do not read my Facebook.
Just look at this. This is a top fan. This is from Mohammed Dawood. He has 15 bullet points. Fareed, this is a book. Jordan Thornton wrote you an essay with citations. Sajid Khan, top fan. Sajid wrote you a poem, Fareed. This guy's doing couplets and sonnets. These aren't comments. These are screams from their plastic-covered couches, looking to you, looking for affirmation. So what this moment is right now, what we're gonna do on the show is, I call this game Dad Affirmations.
Dad Affirmations.
This is from Nusimoa Mualavio. He writes, the aims must remain for Europe, NATO, and the world, UNGA resolutions, to weaken Russia, Putin, and supporters for the barbaric invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine must win and survive the war so that they can communicate their life-supporting laws to descendants. Let's affirm him.
Good evening. I found your analysis of Ukraine incredibly astute. Frankly, I had not even considered the importance of communicating life-supporting laws to descendants. I'm humbled by your wisdom and hope you will continue to add your enlightened commentary on my Facebook page.
Dad affirmations successful.
This guy has been commenting on your videos and has just been waiting to hear back from you. Look at this one. Here's another one from a top fan. This is from Muhammad Ali Saroush. He writes, both politics and religion are bad when engulfed in extremism and biases. Worse is when they are used for personal or elites' benefits. A society where politics manages public affairs and religion provides a foundation for ethical behavior and faith and coherence with itself.
Good evening, Mr. Surush. I just want to express my sincere gratitude for taking a moment out of your busy day to share your insights on politics and religion. While often a combustible mixture, they can indeed exist in coherence with society when extremism is avoided. The exclamation point with which you ended your words was appropriate, as this point surely deserves to be loudly exclaimed. Kudos.
Dad affirmation successful.
You have no idea what this is going to mean to this guy.
That's nice. I like the picture. No, this is great. I love these people. I mean, I love the sense you have with these people that, they want their voices heard. They want their voices, they want to be acknowledged. And they're very engaged with the world. They're very interested. They're model citizens. And, in some ways, this is their path of citizenship. This is what they want. I've often viewed what I do as public education.
One of the things I've noticed in your editorials is you've never framed things, or very rarely, I don't think I've ever seen this. I don't think I've seen you frame things by saying, as an Indian, or as someone who was raised Muslim. Is there a reason why you do that? How do you think people see you? Do people see you as an American, or do they see you as William Dafoe with a tan?
It's a great question because I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
So when I started out, it was very important to me that that I was able to make arguments that anyone would either agree with or disagree with on the basis of the value of the argument, not the identity of the person making the argument. And I felt like, look, I got a PhD at Harvard. I want to be seen as a great journalist, a great intellectual, not some, I don't want to trade on my identity. And by the way, starting out, there wasn't any advantage to doing it, right? People forget now, but 30, 35 years ago, nobody wanted to, it didn't do you any good to say that, you were brown or Muslim or anything like that. It just...
No, trust me, I'm aware.
You're right, right.
No, I'm aware. So you're telling me that wasn't a cool thing to say 20 years ago? Gotcha, okay.
But part of it is I genuinely felt like, I'm trying to meet everyone. I want to meet you on neutral ground. After 9/11, I realized that I had some real special knowledge of having actually lived and breathed in a Muslim community, not just read about the religion, but knew it intimately. And so I did very occasionally mention that, there were, and I would use it, I'd be thoughtful about when I was doing it was a way of trying to express something that I felt people weren't getting.
Yeah.
So for example, there was a time at which people like Bill Maher were saying a lot about, Muslims feel this way, and I was trying to explain, look, my mother is a Muslim woman, and most people are just getting by.
And for you to articulate that meant a lot to me, and I think to so many people around the world. Hey man, we can talk about the inner workings of the Torah, the Talmud, the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sirah, all of that stuff all day. But in our core, if you have a parent, you remember the first Eid namaz, you remember having jalebi with your dad, you remember these little memories, and it has nothing to do with religious dogma.
Thank you.
And it's about humanity, and it was really beautiful, man. And I want to say thank you. Hey, we can talk about, and this is someone who works in media, we can queue up, inbox any psycho via Zoom feed. And they can spout anything. But for you to humanize the majority of that world and of the way Muslims feel, I thought that was kind of beautiful. There were many years where that perspective was not given. How do you feel about that? I know it's a lot to carry.
It's a big question. So thank you, because what I was trying to convey is exactly what you said, which is that for the vast majority of Muslims, as for Christians, religion is not an ideological thing. It's custom, it's tradition, and it's comfort. It's what connects you to your family, your past, and that's how people practice it. And somehow people were just isolating Islam and assuming that the grandmother who was giving prayers is like secretly wishing that some suicide bomber is going to go and do something, And that was what I was trying to get at. I did one time, there was a couple of columns I did do, opening commentaries for the show, where I did say very explicitly, I am a Muslim and I'm writing this as a Muslim. And it was when Trump was campaigning and was saying the most nasty stuff about Muslims and talking about a Muslim ban and things like that.
I remember these segments.
At that point, I decided to myself, look, I need to stand up and be counted, because I want my viewers to know that, you're hearing all this stuff about Muslims, but, I am one, and I was born and raised one. It was complicated for me because I'm not a practicing Muslim. And so, there was this weird feeling of like, I didn't want to not say this because that would seem like cowardice. It would seem like I was somehow ashamed of it. But I also didn't want to claim some kind of mantle that didn't quite fit me because, I haven't been to a mosque as a worshiper in 40 years. So it was a very complicated feeling, but I decided it was important to do. I got a lot of hate mail. It was the only time I can think of. There was one other time after 9/11 when I got really nasty stuff that even made me worry. I got calls at home. My daughters were at that time 8 and 12, I think, and they're getting these horrible calls from people saying, your father's horrible. Why doesn't he go back to XYZ and all that kind of stuff. But I still felt like I had to do it because it was a way of making people aware that these vast characterizations of people might include people that they respect and admire, that I was, so I wanted to stand up and be counted. But in general, the reason I haven't done it is really just because I want to be known for my work, for the quality of the thought, for the quality of the analysis. I am very aware, and I've tried to be better about being aware and being engaging, that I stand for something for a lot of people of color, people who are, even just immigrants, often Muslims, particularly South Asians.
Facebook fans?
Facebook fans. Whenever I give a talk, what I'll notice is a lot of the people who mill around afterwards will look like me. And people will say to me, young kids particularly, it's so great to see someone like you doing well. So I'm very aware that I have a role as a role model. And I try to be very, conscious of that and honor it and encourage people. But I don't want to become a spokesman for an ethnic point of view.
It's interesting because for me, watching you growing up and then getting to know you, and actually, we've met, we've hung out, you've held my daughter when she was born, really these really beautiful moments. But I think about this all the time, that you kind of walked so that I could run in ways. As a person in media, as a person who can go on any talk show, even your existence in and of itself, you helped break a lot of those barriers. Yeah. So even though maybe you weren't trying to do it or you didn't want to be ghettoized in your opinion, I think you did something that was pretty powerful, man.
But you've done the same thing where your comedy, most of it is funny to anyone.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It's not about, and then there are the parts where you bring in your perspective, and again, it's a way of connecting with people rather than isolating.
Early in your career, did you ever feel like you had to do that as a survival mechanism? Of like, you know what, man, I'm the only one in the room. I really have to make sure my arguments are airtight.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, I was an immigrant. I was trying to assimilate, and I was aware that not a lot of people are interested in where, in America, people are not that interested in where you come from. They're interested in where you're going to.
They don't care about Canada.
Right,
How would they possibly care about any other country?
So yeah, I think be totally honest, yeah. I mean, there was a part of me that just wanted to fit in.
This episode is brought to you by Kolkata Chai. Gentler caffeine, low sugar, and bold flavor. That's the promise of chai. I'm talking about the rich, authentic flavors of masala chai, made with organically sourced tea and hand-milled spices, started by two real brothers in 2019. This chai is the real deal. If you don't believe me, this is the only chai we serve in my house. Grab the best chai in the game at kolkatachai.co.
It sounds like one of the things that you chatted about and that you've kind of mentioned is Fareed the young man had this desire to assimilate, to fit in, both naturally and due to your circumstances. Hey, I'm new to the country, and just who Fareed is. Yeah, I want to fit in. I want to be part of the.
And by the way, just like when I came to America, I knew one human being in America, my brother, who was also a scholarship student in college. I had no money because even if I had, my parents were okay by Indian standards. The currency was unconvertible, so you're kind of really on your own. And I don't think most Americans really understand, native-born Americans, what it's like. You're 7,000 miles away from your country. Your parents are, by American standards, poor. Nobody here. Of course you're going to try and fit in.
No, I saw your graduation photo with your mom, and it was really, man, it was really heartwarming.
Yeah, she was wearing a sari.
She was wearing a sari. I go, man, this kid had to really fit in. What would that Fareed do in the 2020s? Would that Fareed be a part of the BLM protests, the anti-Trump protests? Would he be at the Women's March? Would he be at the Gaza protests? Think about that Fareed. Obviously, you have a mortgage now. It's a different Fareed, and you have a different temperament,
Yeah.
But think about that Fareed.
I think it's a very good question because, one of the points I try to make in the book is that a lot of the people who did things that people thought were radical at the time have been vindicated, because the world moved in their direction. I'm particularly I'm impressed by the women's movement, because it's such a transformation. For all of society, Asian societies, Western societies, Muslim societies, Christian societies, women were second-class citizens. And then over the last 40 or 50 years, that has fundamentally changed. And those people like Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem, who took out, who marched in the barricades, they really fundamentally changed society in an incredibly important and positive way. But if I'm totally honest with myself, I would say I don't think I have the temperament. Even then, I would have been the person writing in favor. I would have been the person cheering them on. I would have been the person maybe moderating them a little, saying, don't make too many claims that really piss people off. Let's try and get this reformist. Let's get this part and take the win and move on. So I feel like I in general, I think I've been on the side of causes that have been important, but I'm not the guy who breaks the windows. I'm not the guy who, and maybe it's a failing in me. I mean, I readily admit that. But I'd be the guy trying to, explain it and rationalize it and persuade the people who are not being persuaded. Look, this is actually a reasonable demand.
Your natural sensibility is an optimistic kind of worldview of America.
Yeah, and part of it is, look, I'm an immigrant. I came here. This country has been great to me. But I also do think that people don't think enough about, maybe it's because I grew up in a place like India. I mean, it's amazing that we live in this country that has so much wealth, that has so many opportunities. I mean, it's extraordinary when you think about the vast scope of human history that most Americans don't realize we're living in the richest country in the history of the world. We're living in a country which has more rights for more people than in the history of the world. That's something to be dazzled by.
What do immigrants owe the countries that take them in, and what do those countries owe immigrants?
I think we owe the country a certain amount of a kind of loyalty, but loyalty doesn't mean you shut up and bear whatever it is. Loyalty means you're loyal to the country and you're trying to help it become a better place. I do think that there is a certain obligation to, I don't want to say assimilate, but to find a way to understand and appreciate the culture of the country you've come into. I think if all you wanted was to recreate Little India, you could stay in India, right? You could stay in Mexico, right? There should be a reason you've come here, that you found something about this place attractive. The fact that it's open to all kinds of people. What do countries owe immigrants. I think they owe them respect and not demeaning them and not demeaning them on the basis of how they look or how they seem. And if you want to say you don't like somebody because whatever they're not working hard or they're
late.
But I think the idea that and I think that there is a lot of that. Look, it's easy to focus your anxiety on human beings. A lot of the stuff we talk about and that's in the book is these vast structural changes that have taken place. Right. The rise of a global economy, the rise of digital, the information explosion, even some more abstract things, the role of women in society. Mm-hmm. That's all very abstract, global capital, global trade, technology. But what's real are human beings, right? So when you're worried about all these other things and you're affected by all these other things, the one thing that it's easier to focus on is that guy or that woman who's come into my neighborhood who looks different, who sounds different, who worships different gods. That must be the problem.
You don't look away from the worst things that America has done. You've covered the coups, the shady alliances, the wars. You see it for what it is. But I feel like no matter how bad America is, at the end of the day, Fareed forgives America. Of all the years that you've been covering foreign policy, has America ever done anything unforgivable? Here's what I'm really saying. As an Indian dad, how can you forgive America so easily?
I would say probably, if I look at it again, deeply personally, I think what America did when Bangladesh was trying to become independent. So just to give people the context, this is what used to be called East Pakistan, right? Which was part of Pakistan. Bizarrely, Pakistan was divided into two
East
halves.
And West,
The eastern
and they weren't
part,
next to each other.
Right. The eastern part was being brutally dominated by the West. These guys tried to launch essentially a war of independence, and the Americans absolutely, totally, and completely back Pakistan in its repression. I think we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who were killed as a result of that, as a direct consequence of that American support, American weapons, all that. And I grew up in India at the time. I was in India when that was happening. To watch that was very tough. I mean, I understood the geopolitics of it even then because the U.S. needed Pakistan because it was the opening to China was happening through Pakistan, and Nixon and Kissinger were relying on Pakistan. It still was a pretty brutal and unforgivable thing because ultimately they lost. Bangladesh became independent. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even like it worked. It was, but
what you're saying
probably a million people died.
What you're saying sounds so analogous to what some of my friends who are Iraqi, Afghani, Syrian, what they feel and what their families have experienced over the past 3 decades. So how does one forgive America so easily? How do you wrap your head around that? What is worthy of, we can never forget this?
I try to keep all those things in mind, and it's like I don't excuse it, but I don't get so traumatized by it that I can move forward and say, okay, can we do better? Can we learn from what we did? So for example, I'll give you an example, and this shows you how these are morally complicated choices. I was very strongly of the view that the United States should not get involved in the Syrian civil war because we would essentially be replaying Iraq one more time. Mm-hmm. We would be picking one side in a very complicated civil war. We would massively exacerbate the suffering because now it would be our weapons and our but staying out was not consequenceless, right? I mean, there's going to be war and bloodshed. But I said, it's better. There will be much less bloodshed than if we got involved and we started to rain down firepower one way or the other. So you're always trying to ask yourself, what's the lesson here? What's the way we can do better?
It feels like you keep pointing me towards something where patriotism in America and being proud to be an American almost feels like picking a cell phone plan. You're like, come on, you got Verizon. It's so much better than Cricket Wireless. You could have a shithole plan like Cricket, and you're like, sure.
Well,
Verizon has its problems.
So there's the comparative point of view you're describing is worth keeping in mind, which is, for all its flaws, okay, the United States as a world power has behaved a hell of a lot better than the other super powerful countries in the world, right? Look at the 20th century. What were your choices? Your choices were Soviet Union, Mao's China, Hitler's Germany, Imperial Japan, Imperial France, Imperial Britain. I think, we're not perfect, but of those choices, I'm glad America ended up the dominant country in the world, not Soviet Union, not Hitler. So, there is some value to a comparative perspective, because
I think so much of
it's what Biden says, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. What were the alternatives to America?
But there's a bit of a patronizing patriotism there. It's almost like when you're in high school. I went to Davis High, okay? Davis High was fine. Sure, I'll go to class, I'll do my tests. I'm not gonna burn down the campus, but don't make me do the school cheer. Davis High, here we go, let's go, Davis. I'm not doing that. Where's your school spirit? Where's your devil pride? I'm not doing that. In so much of the rhetoric around both the elections and patriotism has this school spirit patronization to it, of like, hey, just say what it is. We know what it is, and let's just be transparent about it. And I think that transparency now is clearer than ever.
But I do think that that's a very interesting difference between an immigrant and a first-generation American, right? Like, I have a little bit more bred in my bones, that comparative framework, right? And you, bred in your bones, you grew up in this country, and as a result, this is what you know, this is what you correctly take for granted, and you're like, this sucks, and I'm not going to be afraid to say this sucks,
As an interviewer, I just want to say I've learned a lot from you, and I've been watching your game tape for a long time.
Uh-oh.
Now, I know the key skill to being a great interviewer isn't the questions, it's the listening.
Yeah.
But listening on camera is kind of boring. So a lot of people who work in news, they got to hit you with the listening face. And I've been watching a lot of the different types of listen faces that people have, and I've learned from the greatest. Now, obviously, you have Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper. They have this sort of confused professor look when they're listening. They hit you with the... They give you that, just kind of... Tapper will give you that. Then, of course, you have the Amanpour chin grab. So you've seen that one. You've seen the...
Yeah.
But you have a whole nother intensity to your listen face.
Uh-oh.
You don't just listen with your ears, you listen with your eyebrows. You're the Harrison Ford of listen face. How do I bring more of that Fareed energy to my listening? I want to listen so hard that it's intimidating. So I'm going to have you coach me on how to be a better interviewer. Is that okay? I'm going to give you some copy to read. You judge my listen face. Is that okay?
It's okay, but I will tell you, I don't think I'm very good. I've never gotten any television training in my life. I, for a long time, couldn't watch myself because I thought it was so bad. I always cringed when I would watch myself.
Wait, why?
Because I don't think I'm good. I don't have...
Wait, Fareed, have you not seen your jawline?
I think that...
You have a jawline that can cut bread, Fareed.
No, but I don't sound like I don't have the baritone.
No,
I don't
you have a great sounding voice. Stop.
I've always felt as though I sometimes think I slouch. I have all kinds of problems with the way I do.
So you don't watch game tape?
Now I do.
No, I've seen you.
Now I do. But for the first few years, I really couldn't bring myself to watch.
Fareed, I don't think you realize that you are a Zaddy. I mean, I've seen some of your Instagram photos that you do this thing where sometimes you'll go on runs and you'll do the Fareed Mountain picture. And you'll be in this really beautiful kind of skin tight Nike dry fit thing. And if you don't think you're thirst trapping, Fareed, I hate to break it to you, you are wrong. You're looking great now. So anytime you say you don't have that on camera, let me just tell you something, and I'm telling this to you to your face. Fareed, you are a smoke show. And a lot of your colleagues are fucking busted. Like, there are some uggos on TV, and I'm telling you, your gravitas, your voice, just the proportions of your face, daddy-like.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, as they say.
Thank you.
How to Listen Face with Fareed Zakaria.
This first one is nodding along to something objectively boring. Why don't you read card 1?
Okay.
Yeah.
In 1890, the United States passed the McKinley Tariff. Similar measures were taken in France in 1892 and Germany in 1897. Joseph Chamberlain, one of the most influential political figures of his age, urged Britain to junk its commitment to...
What'd you think?
Too obviously pandering.
Okay, got it. Let me adjust then. Let's do mild surprise.
All right.
Mild surprise, okay, here we go.
Think of AI agents in the future as personal assistants. Everybody is going to have a conversational interface which can actually teach you to be better at your job or to make important life decisions. That was better.
Okay, good.
That was better.
Okay. Let's do mild horror.
The Russians are firing 60,000 shells a day in Ukraine. The world production in the West can accommodate about 5,000 a day. That seemed a little artificial.
Okay.
I wanted to see more real emotion.
Are you familiar with our colleague Christiane Amanpour? Mm-hmm. So, as you know, sometimes Amanpour she'll have a little prop. I call this the Amanpour chew.
In 1890, the U.S. passed the McKinley Tariff. Similar measures were taken in France in 1892 and Germany in 1897. Joseph Chamberlain, one of the most influential political figures of his age, urged Britain to junk its commitment to free trade in favor of imperial tariffs. So see, that's the danger of a prop, which is it can be useful, but you can overdo it, and then the focus becomes the prop rather than you.
Last thing, as a Fareed send-off, want to highlight the breadth of Fareed's work. Gonna get an autograph from you. The new book.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, here we go. This is the pen. No, that's just the whole.
Oh, okay.
This is the
Oh my
OG
goodness, yes.
Fareed 1.0. Yep. This is it. Why they hate us, Fareed.
Make your daddy glad and have such a lad. Tell your sweetheart not to fight. We proud our boys in line. Over the right away.
Fareed, thank you, man.
Get you $5 more on eBay.
Oh man, I gotta read it. Oh man,
Totally true.
this is my favorite comedian.
How would you feel if you found out that you've been having the fake version of something your entire life? Outraged? Angry? Well, get ready to get mad, because every cup of chai that you've bought at some chain coffee shop here in America is fake. It's packed with tons of sugar and artificial flavors that are horrible for your health. And for some reason, they keep spelling my name wrong. But it doesn't have to be that way. Kolkata Chai is changing all of that. 0 sugar and natural ingredients that you can actually pronounce. Organic black tea, cardamom, black pepper, fresh cinnamon. It's the boldest cup of chai you can find with their unique range of chai blends and concentrates. And you don't have to stand in line for it for hours. You can make it at home in minutes. It's the only chai that's allowed in the Minhaj household. All other chais are forbidden. Head to kolkatachai.co/Hasan to grab your first cup and 2 free gifts on me.